I now have the honor and the pleasure of inviting Dr. Eric Schmidt, Technical Advisor and Board Member of Alphabet and former Executive Chairman of Alphabet, to talk to the winners of the Prime Minister's Innovation Awards, who were announced yesterday. Einat Metzer, CEO and co-founder of Emedgene. Eran Baniel, yes you may. Eran Baniel, CEO and founder of Doux Matok. Professor Yehuda Lindell, co-founder and chief scientist of Unbound Tech.
No, it's fine. No, you sit right there. That's fine. It's so great to be here and celebrate innovation in Israel. I think the way this is set up is we have conversation about startups, about innovation, and so forth. And I think you all are leading, so I'll have you all start. Who would like to start?
I can start. Can you hear me? Yeah. So I'm Einat. I'm CEO and co-founder of a company called Emedgene. And what we do is we created a completely automated genetic interpretation platform. And what it means is that it became easier and cheaper to sequence patient DNA. But the difficult part now is really to interpret the data. And so it's typically being done by a small group of highly skilled geneticists, which perform, for the most part, what's considered to be a research. And so what we've built is an AI platform that automates that research and helps scale genetic interpretation in a way that it will help clinicians to bring it to the point of care. We work with some of the world's leading organizations, among them with the Israeli Ministry of Health, and hopefully help bring the vision of personalized medicine to the point of care. Thank you.
Good. Go ahead.
My name is Eran Baniel. I'm the CEO of Doux Matok. We take sugar and we created a platform of more efficient delivery of sugar to the sugar receptors, to the sweet receptors. That way you need half the sugar, but you get the full sugar taste, no aftertaste. And to put it to the test, I thought I'd bring Eric some Nutella, 40% reduced, and that's for you.
Thank you.
Actually, I can't help it, but last night you ended your speech saying that it's probably technology that would assist us all to get to the age of 100.
Yes.
2-3 minutes later, I accompanied Professor Baniel, my father, to receive the prize from Mr. Netanyahu. My father will celebrate 100 years old. He's the inventor in a month.
Yeah, that's incredible. Congratulations.
Thanks. But that was a prophecy.
Go ahead.
Yes, hello, my name is Yehuda Lindell. I'm the co-founder and chief scientist of Unbound Tech. We have technology based on years of research in academia on how to compute on data without actually revealing it, so that you can keep privacy without losing utility. And we're applying it today primarily in the space of protecting cryptographic secrets and keys of all kinds. And we'll move also towards privacy applications as time goes on.
So, and for the benefit of the audience who were not there, the Prime Minister presented them with the top award for innovation in your country this year. And I think all are very well deserved. In my decade or so of working in Israel, I've invested in various groups I'm associated with more than $360 million into 63 Israeli startups. Google has continued to invest heavily in Israel, and I think the core reason is there is no better concentration of talent than this place. in terms of a dinner that you want to have or a collective you want to put together. It's something unique about the culture that you all have built, which I admire enormously. So with that, congratulations to all of you.
Thank you.
So who would like to go first in questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
So we had it set up in advance. I'm going to just read it. So when going after an ambitious goal, like Google's organizing the world's information, or in our case, bringing genomics to the point of care, what's your number one piece of advice?
So your business has historically lacked scale. And it's obvious that if we had DNA sequencing at mass scale and databases that had that information in it, there would be enormous health benefits. As you know, when the initial genome was sequenced, it cost about $3 billion to sequence one person. Today, that cost of sequencing is well below $1,000 per person and declining quite rapidly, and it's declining at roughly twice the speed of Moore's law. So that sets up a great opportunity for your company to come in and use AI tools to provide the judgment against DNA sequencing. So first place, I'm sure your tools will work. Your problem is you have to get more DNA sequencing. So I would try to be clever in how do I get companies and partners to spend their money and their time to get you the data you need. So when you're in a startup, the key thing to do is to get other people to spend money to do work with their money that benefits you, right? Now, you sit there and you say, well, I want to sequence the whole world. So do I. It'll cost $1 billion. You don't have $1 billion. But if you could create the necessary benefits that many corporations, insurance companies, and governments would do that into a common database, you get everything you need. And with AI, there's increasing returns to knowledge. So if you have 1,000 DNA sequences, you're far less knowledgeable than you have 100,000. And you have much more than 100 times that information because of the learning that goes on. So you're in a large big data business, but you don't have enough big data. So that's, to me, the key question for what you're doing. I'm sure the technology works. The question is, how do I get the data? And then you're off to the races.
Great, thank you. Agreed.
Is that your plan?
Absolutely. We're speaking to some large organization that have sequenced 100,000 people. The Ministry of Health in Israel is one of them, but there are others in the world that is speaking to. Planning to partner on the data side so we can improve our algorithms and essentially be able to scale that.
So in your industry, there's a belief that if you have about 50,000 samples, that's enough to make a medical fact. To me, 50,000 samples is nothing, right? Imagine if you had 1 million, or let's say you had half of Israel, right? What could you say about Israeli health, health spending, health costs, as there's a greater percentage of aging, the economics of Israel's health system will begin to become difficult. Using your tools, they can help predict what kind of doctors they need and make their doctors more efficient. So you are at the beginning of a solution of a multi-billion, I guess, dollar or shekel problem that you could change the slope of. That's a very powerful position to be in.
The one thing that I would say additionally is that there is a lot of knowledge that is hidden in already existing resources. And so in genetics, it's not just about data, it's about knowledge, and these are two different things.
Right.
Because for patients, there's unique variants that many times have never been seen before. So even if you have a lot of data,
well, so in fact, I had my own DNA sequence, and this nice doctor came to visit me and told me, well, there's nothing wrong with you. And I said to her, well, how do you know? I said, well, these are the facts and so forth. It would have been much better to have your tool, because then I would have had the benefit of all of that analysis.
So we published last year a publication about our ability to predict the next, or the last actually, gene disease association just by reading hidden knowledge within publications. So we had the ability to predict that just by existing knowledge, triangulating information from many different resources. So there's a lot of knowledge out there that just exists somewhere in scientific publication but doesn't actually being practiced at a point of care.
And by the way, for artificial intelligence in general, that's true. In every field represented here, there's an awful lot of knowledge that nobody knows because it's written somewhere and nobody's read. And the AI can read it now. Good. Go ahead.
What's in your box of tools that you'd provide a startup working with very big and powerful and muscly corporations? We are, on the one hand, working with the larger sugar guys and with the larger CPGs.
Right.
How can a startup cope with the difference in culture,
Right.
let's call it nice?
Well, you're being polite. Let's just
Yes.
say that you move fast and they move slow, right? That's kind of the problem.
Yeah.
And historically what happens is a company like yours has a new invention, and 5 years later, the big company signs the contract. So the only way to achieve that, to make that happen, is to get some pressure applied from the marketplace. So the ideal scenario is that your product is available commercially in small quantities, right? Because you know how to make it. And that it creates a market and a demand. And these large companies, people are constantly, well, have you heard about that? Have you heard about that? Why don't you have that? What's wrong with you? And then that creates pressure on them to come to you. The best sales situation is where you don't have to sell the product, you just have to fulfill the demand. Right? So the best scenario is they think your product, like I think your product is so extraordinary that I'm going to buy this in the United States. Why can't I have it now? Why is it not in my house in California or New York or what have you? Why do I not have it tomorrow? What's wrong that's preventing? Is it a regulation? Is it a lack of supplier? Is it something wrong with the product? But I want it now. Now, why do I want this? Because sugar is poisoning human beings, right? In the sense of the obesity problem and so forth. This might be the solution to saving millions of lives. I don't know, but in Israel, maybe people are healthier, but in America, the obesity epidemic is going to be the #1 killer. And it's all correlated with sugar and sugar use.
Thank you.
So you understand my point, is that if you just sit there and you talk to these nice, pleasant people, nothing will happen. You have to create some form of pressure on the market.
The experience we have is a huge pull from the market. But when it comes to actually putting things into a contract,
Yeah.
we find that the difference in culture between a startup and a heavy CPG or a heavy sugar guys, some of them don't even have an internet site because it's such an old industry, creates some difficulties.
So some years ago, I was doing a contract with a telecommunications company, and I won't say who, and I said, let's get a deal done. And they said, great. And then I talked to the deal person, and he said, it takes typically 18 months to do this deal. And I said, that's why they're losing. Right? If it takes 18 months for a business to make a contract, there's something deeply wrong. From the time they agree to the time they're signed, there's something deeply wrong, or they're regulated in the wrong way. But I think in your case, you don't have enough power to change that. All you can do is use demand to cause pressure on the supply chain and the government as necessary.
Thank you.
Right.
So one of the challenges that we face is that we are using technology that's based on 20 years of research in academia, cryptography, it's a subfield of cryptography that not even all cryptographers are familiar with. It's a security product, so you can't really look at it and understand the benefits just by seeing that it works. And it's a very disruptive technology. And my question is, how do you educate a market about a disruptive technology that's very difficult to explain, and people really can't understand exactly what's going on there?
Are your algorithms based on homomorphic encryption?
We actually use secure multi-party computation because it's orders of magnitude faster than fully homomorphic
Even
today.
faster than the normal homomorphic.
we can do about
So you have a real breakthrough, and no one understands what your breakthrough does.
Some, but not many.
Yeah, like a small number of people in Israel, basically. In security, so if you look at studies of the internet, most people are very concerned that their information is going to be stolen on the internet, which usually, as the audience knows, occurs because their passwords get stolen. And by the way, in general, you should use two-factor authentication, and you should use the Chrome browser. A separate point. If you use two-factor and Chrome, you should be just fine. But most people are afraid of that. And so you have to come up with some way of feeding yourself into the solution of that fear. So the fact of the matter is people don't want to have to do business with you, but they have to, right? They don't sit there and say, oh my God, I need this new secure special encryption from this Israeli company. What they wake up and they say is that my data is at risk and I need to do it. And you need to figure out a way to position yourselves as that. The best ways to do that are to first have some partners who are smart, same issues we discussed before. And then what I like to do is I like to see companies like yours produce written reports, analysis. If you look at what Mandiant did as a good example, they would publish reports on the state of encryption and the state of break-ins that were very technically accurate, but they were also very readable. And they became a resource and referred to. People say, well, call them, because people don't understand this. You want to be the company that when something happens, they call you. And even if you're the wrong person, they called you because you're seen as solving this new problem. So you have to paint the problem and then paint yourself as the solution using that. That will work. And once that starts happening, the beauty is that you can charge almost anything you want to for your product, because the people don't understand what it does, right? But you're the best in the world, and it's crucial for them. So let me give you an example. Let's say that your product costs $1 million, and it solved the cybersecurity problem for a company. Would the average company spend $1 million to solve it? Absolutely. Because the liability alone of not solving it, the people get fired, they lose their jobs. So in your case, the fact that you position yourself as the solution can easily scale to the sale if you follow the branding, and then of course the product has to work, which I'm sure it does.
Thank you.
More questions or comments?
So what's the biggest mistake companies that want to transform markets do?
You don't transform markets in the way you just described. Markets change because products come along and new platforms come along that solve a new problem. So I think you're far better off framing it as my product is not only powerful, but it's a powerful platform. In your case, if you think about the AI work that you're doing, the general imaging and the general data analysis could also be applied to many other data analysis problems in medicine. So you should aspire to new, not just genetics, but also everything involving the kind of human insight that you have. I think they're rushing us along, so perhaps let's get a couple more. Well,
some red.
Let's ask another quick question from each of you, and then we'll finish up.
Sure.
Okay.
How do you see the food tech space partnering with the digital technology space?
Well, food tech is a very big deal. I personally invested some in that area, and I think it'll mostly be in the analytical case. We can basically really prove that the claims that you're describing are really true, and I'm sure they are. And that's a natural partnership, and that will help drive growth in your area.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So I'll ask how you see the role of academia versus industry in innovation. It's a question I'm personally interested in, and Google's also very much came out of academia.
In my career, it's always been the case that an assistant professor and 2 graduate students have changed the world. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 1. But there's something about the high end of academia, which you have here in Israel, and you have fantastic people at this level that are the start of everything powerful. I think that part of what academia should do is encourage faculty to dual hat in both worlds. I think it's in the faculty's interest, and it's in the university's interest. America has done this very well. Europe has not done this as well as Israel has. So here's an area where Israel is doing super well. And we need what the Israeli universities are emphasizing, and we need them to have more money, more support, more top talent. Thank you all. I hope you get a sense of the power of what's happening here in Israel by the quality and the insight of this extraordinary team. Thank you guys very much.